like the night before in Scooball. The Scooball outing, man, I was as hyped up on Tuesday for Scooball, but Tim Anderson jumped in there and spoiled that party, and it was pretty sad. But Mize didn't disappoint. I liked him. It was exciting, and it brought some energy. But you know, we wondered if the Tigers were going to be able to get out of the first week before people started to tune away and turn it off. We'll see now. They've got I think people will tune in to see Casey. Must see Casey. I can see that. Scooball again. But other than that, now that the team's lost 9 in a row, people were going to get excited. But now that you got the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs, I think people are going to be kind of not tuning in as much to the old Tiger Ball Club.
Yeah, I'll get to the 9-game losing streak in a minute, but I'm like you. I was very excited to see Casey Mize make his debut, and through this White Sox series where we had the 3 debuts back to back to back, we have seen whether or not these 3 prospects can meet the hype, and we've seen that Isaac Paredes. He was the least hyped out of the 3. He was the 6th best prospect in the Tigers system, just outside the top 100. And even though he didn't have a whole lot of hype, he hasn't matched it. He had the bloop single off the handle of his bat on Monday to drive in 2 runs. And so far in his major league career, he's 1 for 9. That's not what Tigers fans are hoping for as they continue to try to get their third base problem fixed. Tarek Skubal, he got a whole lot of hype beginning last year when he just shot up the ranks and was striking everybody out, got up to Double-A. Yeah, Tuesday he had a ton of control problems. He looked like a typical Tiger starter from the very first batter when he gave up a home run to Tim Anderson. Did not match the hype. Casey Mize did match it. The split finger looked amazing. That's one of the big reasons why he struck out 7. I mean, it was sharp. It was late. It was hard. The curveball I thought also looked good. He used that on a strikeout or 2. He was tricking this White Sox team that was having no problem hitting every other Tigers pitcher, but had tons of problems with him. I thought he had good command for the most part. He did give up the home run. He did give up 7 hits, but he wasn't getting hit hard time after time. Like when in that, I think it was the 5th inning when he gave up the single so that the first run would score. It was a seeing eye single where it looked like maybe Paredes and Nico Goodrum needed to get a better reaction or hit the treadmill, because you think that on a soft seeing eye single like that, better defensive third baseman and shortstop would have been able to stop that and perhaps make a throw over to first base. But I'm very excited to see what Casey Mize can do against another Chicago team in the Cubs on Monday. The one thing you can say is that he's being thrown into the fire. If he was brought up to the Tigers from opening day, he'd be facing the Reds and the Royals and the Pirates, and he'd be facing like AAA competition. But now it's Major League competition, and it's good Major League competition. He struggled at times, but was a lot more promising than Tariq Skubal.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I see Tim already jumping in on Facebook Live. He says, Mize was awesome to watch. I enjoyed his moments. And that's it. And I think that's the way to look at the Tiger season. I thought that going in, when they have a semi-decent record at the start, no matter who they're playing, you already, people are looking for any kind of shred. Like, hey, we're in first place, this and that, all of that you expected to come. But, 9 in a row now, that run differential's really bad when you look at it, minus 34. And, Spencer Turnbow's, if we were talking a week ago, and we were, he was one of the bright spots in the rotation, but his last couple times now, now you look at him, kind of looking at him sideways. So the rotation, other than Mize here, all the guys, man, you got way too many question marks. And when it started to feel like last year's team, and really the Crone injury, I don't know how much we can lament. Crone, how big of a stick he was, a 1-year free agent, but he was so huge for the team, because since then, I don't think the Tigers have had the same lineup. Man, they've got how many different leadoff guys do they have? Gardenhire seems like he's just pulling names out of a paper bag.
Candelario, Nico, whoever. Wasn't one of the Castros a leadoff hitter one day?
I know. I think Willie, who's on first? He's who's playing third? Let's move all these guys around. That was a lot like last year. You're not, if you didn't know anything about this team, and the relievers are logging more innings than the starters. That's not a good sign, even with an opener like Fulmer. That run differential, that was something to look at. But you just know when you're tuning in, and Gardenhire's like, yeah, well, we're going to have another lineup out here, and then we're going to move old Goody over here. And, I was like, okay, that's not going to work. No team rolling guys out there, all these different lineups. Unless you're doing it for an advantage. I know the Dodgers do a lot of that platooning, but the Tigers aren't doing it.
Yeah, well, the Dodgers have like 12 All-Stars, and they only have 9 spots in their lineup. There's a big difference.
Yeah, those difference.
The Tigers have 0, and even if they had an All-Star game this year, they might just say, you know what, we're not going to give you anyone. But I think that one thing we've been talking about in terms of Casey Mize is how he might possibly be the best starter in the Tigers system right now, and I think that he is. When you consider, number one, the competition, and number two, what he did yesterday, which didn't even give him a quality start, didn't even give him enough for the win. I think he proved that so far he's the front runner to be the best starting pitcher on the team right now. I thought that Spencer Turnbull was a fraud. I know there was a little bit of hype with quotation marks about him coming into this year, but I knew from his very first start when he had good numbers that he could not be trusted because he was missing his spot by a foot on just about every single pitch. And now that the lineups are getting tougher to face, and you got players with more plate discipline, he's having a lot more trouble like he did in today's game. I don't know why he left after 2 innings with the weak bullpen they have, the tax bullpen, but he's Spencer Turnbull is who I thought he was. Matt Boyd is worse than even I thought he was. Michael Fulmer has had 1 decent opener start in 3 opportunities. Tyler Alexander has only had 1 start, and he bombed in that one. Ivan Nova is gone. Jordan Zimmerman has not pitched and hopefully won't pitch at all this year. Tarek Skubal was terrible in his first outing. Casey Mize, by default, is the best starting pitcher on the team right now, best starting pitcher in the organization. And because of that, when you start talking about how watchable this team is, it makes it difficult. Because if you got a great starting pitching rotation but a weak bullpen, then you're going into the 5th, 6th inning thinking, all right, we have a shot if the bullpen can show up for at least today's game. If, on the other hand, the starting pitching is getting rocked, like I heard Matt Shepard saying today, the Tigers are giving up 20 first-inning runs this year, the most in the majors. If the team is getting rocked in the first 3 or 4 innings, and it's 5-0, it's 4-1, something like that, then you're not going to stick around to see whether or not the Tigers are going to come back. So the starting pitching makes them less watchable.
Yeah, and today after getting really, it was a bad game. Turnbull couldn't throw strikes at all. The Tigers couldn't hit, so that was a pretty bad combination. I don't need to tell everybody that, but
yeah. And
you lose 9 in a row here. It's pretty naturally the low point of the season. So,
well, I don't think it is, because guess who's on the schedule next? The Indians, and the Indians. We're looking at potentially a 12-game losing streak. Then you got the Cubs, and we haven't even faced the Tigers haven't faced the best team in the division yet, the Twins, and that's next weekend. I don't think they're going to get to 20 losses in a row, but did we think they were going to get to 9 losses in a row when they were 9-5?
Yeah, there's not a lot of wins there. They never beat Cleveland. Going for what? I think they're going to start getting into record territory. They're pretty, 20 in a row to a team. I think 23 is in the last 50 years is the record. So, that could be achieved this weekend. That's something I want to stay away from. DJ on Facebook, must not be any Yankee games tonight. He says, look, that team is terrible. Of course they have a different lineup every day. He slipped an F in there. So, yeah,
I think a lot of Tigers fans want to slip one of those in there with 9 straight losses.
I was a little bit worried because Keith wasn't on the YouTube chat, but there he is. He's checking in. Said, sorry I was late. He's even apologizing for not being there right from the start. He says Mize should have started the season with the Tigers, at least come up after 2 weeks. Yeah, I think we realized that the Tigers were slow playing him because of that service time, Super 2, and not trying to get his clock started. I thought he should have been up too. He deserved it, but that's what other teams do. So the Tigers are playing this, you could say cheap. I'll say it. They're cheap. Yeah. They're playing it cheap like other teams. But I think after the first week when the Marlins were out, getting coffee, it looked like they weren't going to make it to the second week. I think the Tigers started thinking, ooh, we can slow play them for another year. And plus, they had a halfway decent record, so they're like, hey, people won't be complaining too much. But yeah, like if he didn't call him up when he did earlier this week, man, people were ready for him to be out.
Well, and now that they've lost 9 games in a row, and it's not just, well, this is the one spot in the rotation where Casey Mize would have been starting and could have saved the team, that there's no argument to be made about, well, if Casey Mize had been up starting the second week or starting with the first series of the season, like the Kansas City Royals did with Brady Singer, who was drafted 17 spots behind him and made his major league debut in the second game of the season. There's the rationale to hold him back for at least the service time for this year makes 100% sense. They just don't have the talent anywhere on the field, offense, defense, starting pitching, relief pitching, to be competitive whatsoever. The schedule's going to continue to make things worse. I was looking at some of the numbers. The Tigers are 21st in batting average, 23rd in OPS, 16th in home runs before they start to take this nosedive with the tougher schedule. They're also 28th in walks. One of the two teams behind them in walks, the Cardinals, and they've only played like 5 games. So the Tigers are basically 30th in walks as they get ready to face the Indians again, and then the Cubs, and the Twins, and the Brewers, and then the Twins. I mean, it's going to get bad. The only reason to watch right now is Casey Mize, because, and I would say Skubal as well. Isaac Paredes hasn't given you much of a reason to watch, and the whole rest of the team, including Miguel Cabrera, has given you pretty much no reason to watch.
Yeah, I think you're reading Tim C's Facebook Live post. He says, sadly or happily, Mize is the only thing the Tigers got going right now. Hopefully he continues to impress, give us something to watch. Yeah, that's it. Used to be must-see JV. Now it's must-see Casey. So, is that right? Yeah, something like that. So, yeah, it's getting like I try to watch them all, but even the other night, was it after Skubal was out, like, you knew the game was over. It was getting into the 8th. And it's like, I usually don't check out, but, I checked out some games.
Yeah.
And, I was watching Lakers. Well, it was Lakers.
Lakers versus Trailblazers.
Yeah. So that was, and that paid off. It ended up being an awesome game. And we'll get to some NBA coming up a little later on in this broadcast.
Yeah, and one more thing on this game for today. Lucas Giolito became the third White Sox pitcher in the last 50 years to go at least 7 innings, strike out 13, and not give up a run, joining Jason Barea and Chris Sale. And, of course, Giolito does that using a cheat code, and that is the Tigers as an opponent.
Yeah, it helps. Maybe they should have a little asterisk next to that game against the Tigers.
This one didn't really count because it was against the 2020 Tigers.
Well, they say that like when Dan was talking about, the Tigers losing 20 straight to the Indians, he put an asterisk next to whoever was number one. Was it the Royals? Whoever they were playing was an expansion team. So they like, yeah, well, they did it against an expansion team. Could be that. Like, well, they did it against, the Tigers.
Well, speaking of which, I was reading a quote from Lucas Giolito after today's game, and he said, "Oh yeah, I think we've turned the corner, and we knew that coming into this year we were going to be a good team, but we've turned the corner." And I retweeted that quote, and I mentioned, wait a second, you guys are 15-11, but you're 6-1 against the Tigers, 9-10 against everybody else. Let's not say that you've turned the corner when you have a losing record when you're not playing the Tigers. The Tigers almost don't even count.
Beat the bad teams and split with the other ones. That's the name of the game. You'll be in the playoffs even when it's a real season, not a short one, truncated one.
That's true. That's fair. Let's turn the page now to the second chapter.
Oh, the ongoing saga of the Big Ten and their commissioner, Kevin Warren, where just over 2 weeks ago, after the presidents slipped out there a anonymous vote, the next day he canceled the Big Ten season, but nobody was really happy with the way he did it. And so 8 days later, he puts a boilerplate memo out there to the Big Ten community. All right, chap, Kevin Warren's open letter to the Big Ten community. Did he provide enough detail for you?
Well, in terms of enough detail for me, yes, because he didn't need to provide any detail. As I mentioned on Tuesday, there really isn't much of a need for detail because we already know why the season was canceled. If he had just said, it's canceled or postponed and said nothing, didn't do an ESPN or a BTN interview, it would be obvious because you look at why everything else is closing in this country over the last 5 months. The coronavirus. No, not because Penn State sucks. And if Penn State sucks, what does that say about Michigan? Think about that, Dennis. What does it say about Michigan? Just look at what's going on in the country with the coronavirus spreading. I think we had 1,300 new coronavirus deaths yesterday. We see all these pockets of coronavirus popping up at Notre Dame, at North Carolina, at all these other schools the second that they open up for students. So he didn't need to please me because I get it. I wasn't like, oh gosh, I mean the flu's around, people scared about the flu. No, it's not the flu. Folks are getting sick. Folks are dying. We haven't heard any instances of football players dying, but we have heard instances about football players getting sick and having heart issues, including a player, a true freshman from Indiana in the Big Ten. And I guess these individuals out there just want to dismiss that or forget about that or choose not to read that. And we've also got another instance, another story just breaking earlier today about a player having heart issues after testing positive for COVID-19. And I'll put the story up on the screen so that everybody can see it. But I found this story from USA Today about this Georgia State quarterback named Michele Colasurdo, and he's a true freshman, and he's being forced to sit out the season because he has a heart issue. They have not stated whether or not it is myocarditis, but it is a heart issue, and the only heart issue that at least I know of associated with coronavirus is myocarditis. But whether it's myocarditis or a less severe heart issue or a more severe heart issue, it's a heart issue that's forcing him to sit out the season, and it was caused by COVID-19. This is a true freshman. We're talking about an 18 or a 19-year-old being forced to sit out the season. I don't need an explanation. Is it going to be enough for the people that are planning to protest? And by the way, there's a planned protest for tomorrow in front of the Big Ten headquarters that was organized by Randy Wade, the father of Sean Wade, a Deep South Buckeyes defensive back who was flying up from Jacksonville to the Chicago area to protest. Is it going to be enough for people like him? I don't know. But for me, I get it already, and hopefully these others will get it soon.
Well, the Big Ten offices are closed. They're doing all remote work, so no one's
going to see it.
Nobody's going to see it, but it doesn't matter, if they're looking out their window to see the picketers. Hopefully they're, physically distanced, and if they get a couple cameras in there, it'll serve their purpose. Yeah, the whole thing, like, and that we are broadcasted up here in the north, so it's like we're got the Yankee Doodle Dandy going here, and people appreciate that. And most people that are watching agree with that. Now, if you're watching from the South, you'd say, well, that's not the case because we're playing football. And I guess you missed that. We're coming up in 2 weeks from today. They'll be kicking it up, and you guys will be sitting there on the sideline. Everybody will be crying and boo-hooing. But I think the one thing for me that you go back to, and Kevin Warren told Yahoo today, I wrote down the quote, he was asked if he would have done anything differently, and he said he would have brought all the parties together. Yeah, that would have been a really good idea to have the parties together. Don't you think he could have got a Zoom call when he put out that ambitious Big Ten schedule, where if he would have talked to some of the presidents and said, look, this is what we're going to do. We're saying we're kicking it off September 5th, and we're going to play 8-10 games. Don't you think some of those presidents would have looked and said, whoa, we don't think we're playing football at all. You better come out with something a little bit different. That would have been a good start for some communication, because then if they would have put out 6 games and said September 26th, that is when they were looking to start it, but they could move it up if things look better, that would have made a hell of a lot more sense, because it didn't make sense from Jump Street. And then a couple days later, when things are getting leaked and then nobody's got the commissioners back and nobody's talking, it just was an example of how not to do things. It was a meltdown. It was a crisis, but they didn't handle it very well. And then when you come out today, 8 days after, and just put a boilerplate statement out there that kind of mirrored and mimicked the Pac-12s, nobody's impressed with that. And then afterwards, I know he handpicked his journalists that he was going to feed some quotes to, and he'd say, look, those are the guys that would have been picked anyways. The job of that Big Ten commissioner is to get all of those presidents' backs, and then in turn, everybody get his back. And nobody did that. And this was a fractured conference over the last 2 weeks, and it was an embarrassment if you're a Big Ten fan. What Kevin Warren failed to do, even when he got that vote, he easily could have come out the next day and said, we have an overwhelming vote that we're not going to play football. Mm-hmm. However, we're going to still support our kids, and they're going to go out there. We're going to move the practices back, or if there would be, and again, we don't think there will be, start date to September 26th, then there wouldn't be all of this negativity and laughing from the other conferences. You had to remember. And,
who cares if the other conferences are laughing at the Big Ten?
Well, for 3 weeks, it's bad publicity. That hurts.
Well,
you know who cares? You know who cares? Everybody that's a college football fan. That's and especially 17-year-olds that, the coaches are picking up saying, hey, come play with us. It makes the Big Ten look bad. And if they do start playing games, chap, I know you don't believe that there's any way that they're going to, but they might.
They could. You're right. They could. But I know that there are going to be some people out there that if these other conferences, ACC, Big 12, and SEC start playing games, and there are big outbreaks and people start getting sick, people are going to say, all right, no big deal, just quarantine them like they're doing in baseball. The Mets, by the way, had 2 positive tests today. Just quarantine them and just play right on through it. Who cares if there are big outbreaks all around campus? Just play right on through it. Some people are not going to care. But I think there are going to be a lot of folks that say, you know what, this is stupid. I get what the Big Ten is doing. I get that they don't want a big coronavirus and myocarditis outbreak on their campus. So this is a good idea. There are just unfortunately too many people out there that don't care about the consequences, don't care if other people are getting sick, don't care if other people are getting myocarditis and dying. Look at the guy that I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. He's from Georgia State. That's in the South. He's from South Carolina. That's in the South. But that's not going to get anybody from the state of South Carolina, whether it's Clemson or South Carolina, or somebody from Georgia, whether it's Georgia Tech or University of Georgia or those other neighboring states, to say, "Ooh, wow, this is getting one of our own. We need to put the brakes on this." A lot of them are going to want to play anyway. I just don't know what it's going to take for them to back off, whether it's a big outbreak once all the students return, like we've seen from North Carolina, or it's going to be somebody getting hospitalized or even dying. I remember seeing a report about a month ago that estimated, and it was from either a university or some expert, that said if college football is played, they estimated 3 to 8 college football deaths. Now, I don't know. I obviously didn't read their whole report. It probably have a whole bunch of technical, scientific mumbo-jumbo in there. But they estimated 3 to 8 deaths. Are we going to wait until there's somebody on a respirator, a teenager on a respirator, before the SEC, Big 12, and ACC pull the plug?
No, hopefully that's not going to be the case. Hopefully, if it ends up falling apart, then it'll be like when the Big Ten just started getting into practice, that there'll be some testing, and then whatever their contact tracing is, if they have that, and they'll just say, look, we've had these outbreaks and we're going to have to shut things down. That's probably the way it's going to go. And hopefully if it does shut down, that is the way it goes. Tim says, I don't need an explanation either. It's on Facebook. He says, it sucks, but I'm a teacher, and that starts next week. I totally think we are jumping the gun in Lenawee County. DJ says, protest, because he's got question marks and explanations next to it.
Well,
what are they going to do, march to the football field at each school? And then he's got a laughing emoji.
Well, I'm glad that DJ brought that up, because there was a great article from Christine Brennan in the USA Today, and I would definitely encourage everybody out there to take a look at it when they get an opportunity. And it was about what's going to be happening tomorrow at the Big Ten headquarters with Randy Wade, the father of Deep South Buckeyes defensive back Sean Wade, flying up from Jacksonville, not driving from somewhere in Ohio a couple hours west. He's flying up from Jacksonville to stage and lead a protest in front of the Big Ten headquarters. And Christine Brennan interviewed Randy Wade, and Wade said that he had heard from parents of 6 schools, including, unfortunately, Penn State, but also Purdue, Indiana, Iowa, and Nebraska. And they said they wanted to participate. He said he heard from 70 to 100 people about participating in his protest. Brennan asked Wade if he'd consider protesting President Donald Trump, as well as local and state leaders who failed to react in such a way that could have saved college football season. And she said that he paused, and then she said that he would protest them as well. She also asked him if he would be protesting if the other Power 5 conferences had canceled their seasons too, and he said that no, he probably wouldn't be protesting if they had canceled. So one of the things she mentioned was that he's basically protesting based on FOMO, fear of missing out. Hey, look, everybody else is doing it. How come I can't do it? It's like when I was growing up, I'd say, well, that's not fair, Mom. My friend's mom is letting him do this. And my mom would say, am I your friend's mom? Is this your friend's mom's household? And I would say no, and that would be that. But if all parents did the same thing, I wouldn't be able to say to my mom, hey, well, my friend's mom is doing this. You're being unfair. So what Shaun Wade's father, Randy, is doing is acting like a child that sees another parent acting differently and acting irresponsibly.
Yeah, I understand that part. The other side is that this is you do have college athletes, so you understand that part and being cautious. The other side is that this is a business, and half of the country, whether it's a business or whether it's just athletics, and I think football players are predisposed to look. We understand that we could break our necks on the very next play and be paralyzed. We understand that there's issues with concussions and CTE and brain injuries, all that. We want to play, and we know that this gets back to the fundamentals when it comes to COVID, is that, yeah, it's not just about you. It's about the people that you're endangering out there and spreading. But the view down south is just it's completely different than the way we're looking at things. They're looking at it like they understand that spread, but they also think that you need to go out there and face this and work through it that way. People keep saying, they want to take on more risk. That's part of it. It's a culture, it's different, and just like, going to school. They are a lot of schools. I mentioned Tim on there. Mm-hmm. That he's getting ready to go to school. I mean, they are sending students to school. They're not, keeping them at home. And the same thing applies. I know theoretically, they're supposed to have their masks on and keep their distance, but, we know better than that. And look at all the colleges. I know they're going to, and it seems like in 2 weeks, everybody's going to be doing remote learning in college. I wonder if that's going to, trickle down to K through 12. So, we could be sitting here in 2 weeks. And to your point of you're all with Kevin Warren and all this is going to happen, and, they're not going to play football, is still the position that I take as well, although there was no need to pull the plug on the season, for just perception. But if and when it does happen, history will look back at Kevin Warren and say, hey, he made the right move, and it'll make the Big Ten Conference look good. I expect that to happen. But in the meantime, there was no reason that he had to do it now. So, the one thing about just putting out a statement and then, contacting selected journalists, mm-hmm. For me, when somebody can stand up, and these are people that are leaders, these are people that are in power. This could be your boss. You know what? What's wrong?
Keep on talking, but your screen just went white.
All right. Well, and this is not a good time, because what I was saying is you like to look people in the eye. And what it is when it comes down to a leader and somebody, you want somebody to stand up there, take questions and explain it. And you really want to believe in that person. And the way you do that is standing out in front of people. This way it would have been via Zoom and looking out there at all the different reporters that were asking questions, and then being able to speak where, we're all behind this guy. We are unifying. And instead, he took the old boilerplate, here's a little memo for everybody in an open letter. Bad job by Kevin Warren there. But it was also a bad job of the presidents for not getting his back, and it was a bad job not getting the communication with all of them together from 2 weeks ago. So just overall, they've done a really poor job. Even though, even though I think they're getting this right, and ultimately, they'll end up being right.
All right, Dennis, we're going to try and reconnect with you in just a second while I turn the page to the third chapter. So want everyone to bear with us while we deal with still life, Dennis, for just a moment. But as we turn the page to the third chapter, it takes us to a local issue. And for those of you that are watching from other parts of the country, whether it's New York, Florida, Texas, California, Oregon, this is something that certainly will potentially apply to you as well, because what happens in the Detroit area could also happen in your neck of the woods yesterday, and is actually something that has already made national news. But we just yesterday, as we get ready to bring Dennis back in, and there we go. Just yesterday, the city of Detroit's public school teachers announced that in terms of this battle about whether to send kids back to school, and obviously this goes from college to preschool, they have authorized a strike. They have not initiated a strike, but they have authorized a strike if they do not get their way in terms of safety precautions. They're calling it a safety strike. And I want to put up an article from the Detroit News or the Detroit Free Press that actually has some details about the potential for a Detroit teachers union safety strike. And keep in mind, a teacher strike in the state of Michigan is illegal, but you can understand why they might want to do so even if it is illegal. Well, reading from this Detroit Free Press article, it says the Detroit public school teachers voted overwhelmingly Wednesday to authorize what they call a safety strike if the district doesn't meet demands for adequate protections and other considerations related to the coronavirus pandemic. The vote, which drew support from about 91% of the district's more than 4,000 teachers, doesn't guarantee a strike will occur. It means union leaders have the members' blessing to call one if needed. Quote, "It is a vote of confidence from our membership that we will do whatever we need to do to ensure the health and safety of our members and our students of the Detroit community and the Detroit Public Schools Community District." That's according to the president of the Teachers Federation. But it's something that a lot of people from coast to coast, and certainly in the Detroit area, are going to have to think about whether or not they're going to actually be able to send students to school this year, because certainly if there are no teachers, there aren't going to be any students there. The article also says that 80% of teachers prefer to work remotely, and they want special needs kids to go back when Michigan, or at least the Detroit area, enters phase 5 of reopening. And right now the Detroit area is only at phase 4, and they want everybody to go back once they reach phase 6. They also want regular testing, and the story says there's not much resistance from parents because 75% of parents who were surveyed prefer online learning right now. So Dennis, what do you think about this story, which has gained national attention? Detroit's teachers have authorized a strike if their safety demands about the coronavirus pandemic are not met.
Well, I think every family should have the choice of whether they have online or whether they want to go in. But this hammers home, but something that we always know, and then we don't talk about, or if we do, we only talk about for a little bit. It's that when you're talking about the vast majority of inner cities, that we're talking about more of depressed economics, and if you're looking into those schools, and you're really talking about COVID prevention, and if you're a teacher in there, we can just think about, are they going to be able to fight and be able to have the restrictions like more affluent cities and elsewhere? No. So I mean, I get that. I'm with about striking. Here, if they're going to go to school, they need to have. You got to have the equipment available to be able to feel like you're going to be safe and to be able to feel like you're going to be able to keep the students safe, even from the start. And so this is a good thing here. One part about it, if you're talking about doing, school from home, not everybody's, dialed in online, in the
Mm-hmm.
city. So that's a real quandary.
Yeah, that is going to be something to overcome, and I think that they should have remote learning as well. That I mean, teachers have every right to be concerned, especially when they see what's going on these college campuses. These schools are shutting down after a mere number of days because of spikes, and it's not just college campuses. There are K through 12 schools across the country that are opening up and then shutting down because they have a dozen or 100 people that are testing positive, or at least 100 people that are quarantined because of positive tests. It becomes more challenging because if you got kindergartners or even 7th or 12th graders, they're less likely to show symptoms than even college students, but they can still test positive and pass the disease on to a teacher. And if there's no regular testing and not enough PPE, not enough social distancing, then the 60-year-old who became a teacher 45 years ago and is living her dream job and never wants to retire, but is also fat, has high blood pressure and diabetes, could walk into a room with a dozen coronavirus kids, and then she can start picking out her ER bed. It's that simple, unfortunately. And you're right about the disparity between the Detroit school district and other school districts. Everyone in Rochester Hills and Grosse Pointe and West Bloomfield has enough money to have internet access and a tablet so that they can remote learn. But in Detroit, that's not the case. Not everybody has the money to have even one tablet or even one computer in the household, and not everybody is going to have internet access. So one big issue that could happen if they decide to go to remote learning is that it could widen the education gap if you got kids who have not been in school since March, and who knows when they're going to go back to school because they cannot remote learn.
Yeah, on Twitch, it's Paul Pwag is his name,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's Paul. If he says a question: if a college dorm is closed, they say college classing, but in Texas and going to Michigan, is it fair to charge them out-of-state rates for online classes?
I'm not a college tuition expert, but I think they would do so because I don't think that the dorm has anything, or the room and board has anything to do or much to do with where you're getting your education. I think that has more to do with the tuition, where they want to give the discount to people that have been paying their taxes in that particular state the whole time. And if you're coming from a different state, then you have to pay the higher rate. So I would think that it doesn't matter if you're remote learning from home or you're remote learning from your dorm. If you're from out of state, you're probably going to have to continue paying that higher rate.
Yeah, point is, you feel for kids from the start, but ones that would have to be stuck in a dorm and just have to do their classes that way, that would blow. Tim on Facebook, before we flip and get to the next chapter, says my area was just the opposite. I work with special needs. 85% of our parents, according to our administration, we didn't see the stats say that the kids need to go back. However, 15% are already saying they are keeping their kids home. That has affected my room already. Health issues do run in my family, so honestly, I'm at a higher risk.
I'm sorry, did he say 50% or 15%?
15 are saying that they're all already keeping their kids at home.
Yeah. Yeah, that's people have a right to be concerned about this, and um, it's interesting that they're concerned about it if their K through 12 student has to come back home, but they're not concerned about it if it's a college football player who's not going to be coming right back home and perhaps infecting them.
All right, Jeff, let's flip the page.
Yeah, let's do that, and that gets us to the 4th chapter.
Well, the 4th chapter sucks today. We were hoping it was going to be we were hoping it was going to be a great chapter. We were hoping it was going to be a fun chapter, but this is the chapter. This is what it is. It stinks. It happened again. We had a lottery where the Pistons, were slotted in there at the 5th spot, but instead of picking, 5, They dropped.
Oh no! Dennis is gone! They dropped just like the Pistons in the draft. Where did Dennis go? Oh wow. Not only did Dennis go, he flat out just straight disconnected. Uh, all right, let's see if we can get Dennis back. As of course he fell harder than the Detroit Pistons fell in the draft. There's Dennis. But let's here's a tweet from Bleacher Report that has the entire draft lottery for us. And you see the Pistons didn't quite drop as far as Dennis did, but Celtics 14, Pelicans 13, Kings 12, Spurs 11, Suns 10, Wizards 9, and that was the lowest the Pistons could fall. Knicks 8, and the Pistons finished with the number 7 pick in the draft. And looking at my numbers, I saw that the highest percent chance of any pick for the Pistons was the 7th pick, and they had a 26.7% pick or chance of getting the 7th pick. That's what they ended up getting. You look at the biggest winners of the night. The Bulls get the 4th pick, Hornets the 3rd pick. The Warriors, who had all those injuries but are still such a talented team, get the number 2 pick, and the Minnesota Timberwolves get the opportunity to select anybody that they want.
Yeah, well, feedback already coming in here. Raj says J. Cole and LaMelo Ball should be the Pistons starting backcourt next year. Sorry. Yeah, you know what? Look at this. This sucks. You know, the only thing that you want to win number one, and you want to be able to pick whoever you can here, but you could make a case that this is a 5-player draft. You could make a case it's about a 7-8-player draft. Like, there's no consensus number one. There's not really a consensus top 3. You know, so you're looking at Anthony Edwards. You're looking at LaMelo Ball and Obi Toppin, who you mentioned. You know, but could a guy like Killian Hayes, who the Pistons might have considered number 1, the lefty point guard out of France, could he fall to 7? You know, he could. Tyrese Halliburton from Iowa State. There's another guy. I think you zero in when you see a lot of mock drafts. I think that's a guy that people will link up with the Pistons. And then the other one, who I don't think Piston fans will like because he's from overseas, is Avdija.
Danny Avdija.
Yeah, I like. I've watched 5 minutes of his tape. I like what I see. You know, he looks like. I'm not saying he's Luka Doncic, but he's built like that and he plays like him.
Well, and then there's also James Wiseman, who's one of the guys who's in consideration for the top overall pick, and a lot of folks think he'd be a good fit for the Golden State Warriors, who have never had a premium big man and are going to be selected number 2. But this sucks. And what really sucks is the Pistons were playing the worst basketball in the NBA at the time Rudy Gobert tested positive. They had lost 12 out of 13 games after Andre Drummond was traded away. They were making Masterpiece, Silk the Shocker, Mia X, Mystical, C Murder, and all those other No Limit Soldiers so proud. Like, this is how you tank like a No Limit Soldier. And they had gotten all the way to the point where they had the 5th worst record in the NBA with 16 games to go. And while it would have been very difficult for them to pass the Warriors, although it looked like Stephen Curry was about to return, there was a chance that the Pistons could have finished with the 2nd worst record in the league. The 2nd worst. And if I'm not mistaken, the Timberwolves had the 2nd worst record in the league, and they ended up getting the number 1 pick. But either way, the Pistons would have finished with the 2nd, 3rd, perhaps the 4th worst record. They would have finished with a higher draft pick, and the coronavirus is partially responsible for the Pistons being stuck with the 7th pick. Now, the good thing, as you mentioned, is that there might not be much of a difference between the 1st pick and the 7th pick. The Pistons might put somebody like Killian Hayes or Vanderbilt guard Aaron Nesmith or Obi Toppin number 1 or number 2 on their board, and he might fall to them at number 7. So there's still that opportunity. But yeah, it sucks. I think that there are some guys you have to take off the board right away unless they were to trade up, and that would start with James Wiseman. That would start with LaMelo Ball, who is my choice. Not only because of his position, not only because of his talent, but because I want to bring that entire ball atmosphere to Detroit. Perhaps they can start an entire negative campaign about we can't afford to bring him here because he plays no defense just to sink his draft stock. Anthony Edwards, I think, would have to be off the draft board as well. But Denny Avdia could end up being the best player in the draft. He could fall to them at number 7. 6'9" guard who some like to compare to Danilo Gallinari or Luka Doncic. Isaac Okoro, good defender, good athlete. He could be a potential shooting guard replacement for Luke Kennard, although he only shot 29% from three-point land last year. There's still guys that I think Pistons fans can fall in love with, and this is where you have to rely on Troy Edwards to prove that he is a quality general manager when he makes his first selection. He's got to pick the best guy available. Nobody thought that Donovan Mitchell would be potentially the best player in his draft, and look at him now. He's a perennial all-star. So there's the opportunity, but right now it sucks. It sucks.
Yeah, we're seeing the same things with the wings. Yeah, you know what, Lafreniere, look who was picked at 4 a couple of years ago, Makara, the defenseman. But I think it's coming down where you hope that a guy like Killian Hayes falls, but not likely. So if I'm going to make the pick right now, I'm going to do my first 1.0 mock draft here for the Pistons picking 7th. I think the Pistons with the 7th pick in the 2020 NBA draft will pick Tyrese Halliburton from Iowa State.
Well, and he's a point guard, and that it's important to mention that because number one, they have a huge need there. They traded away Reggie Jackson, or not traded away. They bought out Reggie Jackson. He's playing for the Clippers now, and you look at their only other point guards on the roster right now: Derrick Rose and Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown, it looks like he's just going to be a career backup, solid defensive player. And Derrick Rose, he's got 1 year or half a year left, and then he's gone. So perhaps you could have a guy learn under his wing. Dwayne Casey also spoke with the Fake and Dishonest Media yesterday, and he said it's a very deep point guard draft, best player available, and if it's a point guard, we'll take it. So if you scratch off LaMelo Ball, Tyrese Halliburton is going to be a potential option. Killian Hayes is going to be a potential option at number 7. And if they want to trade back, perhaps a guy like Tyrese Maxey is a potential option. There are lots of players that are there. And then the other thing is, he said best player available. When you lose 12 out of 13 after getting rid of Jackson, Morris, and Drummond, you can't just say we need to fulfill a need, therefore we're going to take the 5th best player available right now. They have lots of holes.
Yeah, well, I think everybody's going to agree on that. Yeah, you know what? It just shows you. It goes back to watching Mize last night. Like the people were. You have to endure these terrible seasons for the Pistons and Wings, and this is your night. Like you're thinking, okay, this is going to pay off. All those brutal nights, you're sticking through and watching your team. And then the last couple of years, you've seen it with the Wings. Like this blows, and then like I sat there on Tankathon a night or two ago, and I hit it like 20, 30 times. I ended up with the 7 or 8 pick a lot more than I ended up with the 1 or 2. I was like, hey, this thing, what are they doing? They screwing Detroit. It kind of felt like that. So, whatever it's been, however they have the ping pong balls and everything else. I think the one thing you say is you don't feel like it's rigged, because if it was rigged, you wouldn't have given Minnesota, that top pick. Of course, if it was rigged, you wouldn't have given the Cavs all those top picks like they got over the years. But
they got the 3rd pick.
I do think that the Knicks in the cold envelope, I think they did throw the Knicks Ewing that 1 year.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other big story to take from this draft is the Golden State Warriors, because they're going to be coming next year with a healthy Curry, a healthy Klay Thompson, a healthy Draymond Green, a healthy D'Angelo Russell, and the 2nd best player in the draft. And who knows? They might decide they want to trade back with a team that has 2 or 3 first-round picks and get multiple first-round picks for this draft. But they are going to be loaded for next year. They could be the championship favorites.
Yeah, well, Steph's coming back. So is Klay.
Yeah.
So we'll be ready for that.
All right, let's go to the major wager, Dennis.
Yeah, well, I feel pretty good. The only thing I feel bad about is that, I hit on the Rockets the other night to get up to 173, and I was going to come back and hit the Rockets again, but I already saw it was in the first quarter, and I was like, damn. So I missed out on it. You know what? I'm on a hot streak right now. I've won a few in a row, and I'm just going to play. I want some action tonight, and I'm going to go to the National Hockey League, and this is not the way that you want to bet. This is the way that I'm doing it. I'm hoping for a Game 7 between the Flames and the Stars. It's been a pretty good series. I've taken the Stars earlier in the series, and I won. But tonight, I'm going to, with their backs against the wall, I'm going to take the Flames. Actually, they're probably plus 115 when it comes down to it. But I'm only just putting a little $25 on the Flames tonight to force a Game 7 against the Dallas Stars.
Hey, earlier today, I tweeted out that I was going to be picking the Orioles plus 1.5 against the Red Sox. And I won on Tuesday as well. As while we were on the air, the Phillies were losing to the Red Sox, and they had to cover by 1.5, and the Phillies ended up winning 13-5 because the Red Sox are just that bad. But that's kind of the reason why I'm picking the Orioles plus 1.5 at minus 120. First of all, Orioles, they've lost 4 in a row, but they're a 500 team. The Red Sox won their last game, but they've lost 9 out of their last 10. Nathan Eovaldi's on the mound today for the Red Sox. He's been terrible. Asher Wojciechowski's just been okay. So I figured going into this, the Orioles would be favored, but they weren't. And so when I see that they're getting a 1.5 at minus 120, it's a no-brainer. So I'll take the Orioles. Now, a quick check of the score, and it is 3-0 Red Sox after the 5th inning. But the Orioles are basically only down by 2 runs because as long as they're within a 1.5, then this is a winner. And I have confidence in the Red Sox bullpen to blow it. Supreme confidence in them to blow it, whether the Orioles end up winning the game or they end up losing by 1. So there you go. And if you want a game that you can bet on right now, besides that, I would take plus 6.5 against the Portland Trailblazers. I don't know what the score is in that game right now, but I don't feel confident that the Lakers are going to win this series right now. I've got the Trailblazers in 6.
You flip-flopped on that one.
Yeah, I did after that first game. All right, Dennis, let's now go to the 5th chapter, and that takes us to story time. By the way, the Lakers are up 23-17 in the first quarter. But that takes us to story time, an opportunity for us to share some things going on with our lives. I, of course, have another ride-sharing story, but we start out with...
Shock.
What's that?
Not a shock.
No, it's not a shock. They've all been ride-sharing stories. But we start off first with the man, the Fith, the legend, Dennis Fithian.
Yeah, I was going to talk about one of my new hobbies here during the pandemic, which is farming, but I'll save that for another time. I'm doing a pretty good job, but I mentioned that I hadn't really done much fantasy football work in years past. I usually commit the month of July to, I would say 2 hours, whether it's reading or listening or just drawing up draft boards. Way too much for just playing in one league. I mean, it's stupid to do that much, but I do it anyways. A lot of times when I was mowing the lawn, but it just didn't happen this year because of the pandemic. But this week, I was, trying in the middle of the day, and there's too many other things that I have to do in the middle of the day with a podcast and, the 5th chapter here and some radio work that I'm doing. So I kind of felt like I didn't have the time. So I've started getting up early in the morning, and I've started really getting after it. I'll just show you a brief little I found the old spiral thing.
Gosh.
A lot of highlighters, a lot of up and down here in this keeper league, but I'm feeling good right now. And just this range, I have, I'm going against what they usually say in conventional wisdom, chap, which is, and I've used this strategy over the years myself, which is, you don't take a quarterback early, but this is a keeper league that I'm in, and I picked Lamar Jackson late in the draft last year, but I'm such a big fan of Lamar Jackson, and he is a great quarterback, that even though you're not supposed to pick a quarterback, and having a 2-keeper league, I should throw him back in, and I should keep a running back and keep a wide receiver. I can't help myself. I like Lamar Jackson too much, so I'm keeping him, and I'm going against the conventional wisdom, and I'm diving in there. So I'm going to have to really pull some gems out there, but I've talked myself out recently just in these range of players. I'm down on Amari Cooper and Juju Smith-Schuster, and I'm up on guys like like Austin Eckler and Adam Thielen and Robert Woods, just in that range right there. So some of the things that I've been thinking about, that fantasy league where you just got to keep mock drafting, you got to keep looking at these teams that you come up with. You say, do I really like that team? Do I like this team? Do I like that one? And that's what I've been spending my time doing. My spare time, some of my spare time.
Yeah,
a lot of it.
just looking at that little piece of paper or big piece of paper, I can tell you've put in maybe more effort and work into this season of fantasy football than I put in all of my life.
There you go.
And especially with you talking about doing hours on end, typically in the summer. But as far as my story is concerned, first of all, shame on my riders because they were pretty boring this past week. So that's probably only exciting to my mom because she doesn't like when I have good Uber stories because I don't know, she thinks that I'm associating with them, or I don't know, I'll pick up a prostitute and want to, I don't know, have an affair with a prostitute or pay a prostitute, but
she's afraid you're going to marry a stripper.
Yeah, exactly, something like that. But my riders this week were boring, but I do have a story from a previous week to share, and surprise, surprise, it does involve a strip club. So I picked up this woman from what was probably a middle-class neighborhood on the east side of Detroit. And it was just off of Jefferson on a Sunday night, and she wanted to go downtown. She was on the phone when she got in my car. I wasn't really paying attention to what she said. And then all of a sudden she says, "How you gonna come at me like that when you in jail? J-I-L or J-A-I-L jail." And I didn't say anything because I thought she was still on the phone. And then she says, "Driver." And that's when I realized she was talking to me. And she starts talking to me about this individual who she associated with and still associates with, who is in jail and had been there for 8 years, and he was caught with 3 kilos of cocaine, but he was about to get out soon. She said that he would have been gone longer, but he was caught with 2 other people, and they each agreed to claim a kilo so that nobody would be gone for an extremely long period of time. And so I asked what he was going to do when he got out. And she said that she's been handling his legal businesses while he's been locked up, and she hoped that he would jump into that. But she said that he's got a hustler spirit and said that he knows he can go out and easily get $30,000, $80,000, or $100,000 for a job. So he might end up right back where he was before, just with that hustler spirit. So we get closer to downtown, and she said that she hadn't put her fake eyelashes on, and she asked me if I thought she should put her fake eyelashes on, or if I thought she should have put them on. And I didn't get a good look at her when she got in the car, but I just said no. And she said I had to turn around and look at her first. Because we were at a red light, it was safe to do so, so I turned around and I said, "It doesn't matter what you look like because I don't like fake eyelashes." And she said, "Why not?" I said, "It's because I don't like when a woman has eyelashes that are so big that it looks like she's trying to fly away whenever she blinks." And she said, "Well, that's personal preference." I said, "That's right. I've never seen a woman with big lashes and thought she's been more attractive." So by this time, we had gotten into downtown Detroit, and if you're familiar going down Jefferson, you first get to around the Greektown area and in Greektown Casino, and she started talking about how much downtown Detroit had changed over the last few years. And we got close to Bazooki's, which is a strip club, and we were supposed to go right down that street past Bazooki, but the police had blocked it off, so we had to make a detour. But as we got close to Bazooki, she mentioned that she used to be a stripper there. Now, earlier in the conversation, she mentioned that she was 33 years old, but she said that she was a stripper there at age 19. So 14 years ago, she was a stripper at Bazooki. Then about a minute later, on our detour, we passed by Legend Strip Club. And she said that she also used to dance there when it went by a different name. Now, before I continue, let me just say this. If you are squeamish, you might want to turn away or mute your screen or mute your podcast for the next 30 to 60 seconds. Because she said that while she was working at this strip club that is now Legends, she said one day after one of the baseball games, a guy came in there and gave me $2,500 to step on his balls. Yes, to step on his balls. And obviously, I'm thinking, and I didn't just think, I said, what? And she said, and do you know what his safe word was? Now, obviously, when you got a stranger, a stripper getting in your car saying that she has collected money from a guy in the past to step and stomp all over his testicles, I'm not thinking about what the dude's safe word is. I could barely think straight. I'm a little squirming and screaming, and not screaming, but just kind of moving around like this. And when she mentioned that she got paid this $2,500 for her to step on a man's balls, and I was
Strike
stuttering.
3?
What's that?
Ball 4?
Yeah.
What was her safe word?
Well, first of all, I could barely make out a word because I was stuttering and stammering like I am right now, just thinking about that. And all I could say was, you'd have to pay me $2,500 to do that. And honestly, the price would be a heck of a lot higher than that. But that's the only thing I could think about. But she said his safe word was ooh la la. And I told her, look, I'd heard a lot of stories from strippers over the years, but nothing like that. A couple minutes later, she was out of my car. But I can think of thousands of better ways to spend $2,500 than by giving somebody that much money to inflict that amount of pain on a very sensitive region on a man's body.
Yeah, just go out on the baseball field. Don't wear a cup, man. And start taking some grounders. Bound one will. It's bound to happen. One's going to bounce up and nail you right in the numbers there.
Yeah,
hey,
and you wouldn't have to worry about forking over $2,500.
Yeah, well, out of all your stripper stories, that's been my favorite one so far. Ooh la la. Well, that's going to do it here. We will get you into Tuesday of next week. Will the Tigers have won a game? Chap, let's make a prediction. Will they take one? Will they break the losing streak against the Indians? I'm going to say yes.
I'm going to say no, but they will have a win before our show on Tuesday because behind Casey Mize, they'll get a win on Monday. And if not, they'll use the safe word, ooh la la.
Yeah, ooh la la. Have a great night for Brian Chapman, Dennis Fithian, the 5th chapter. Good night.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the 5th chapter. Huh. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the 5th chapter. Huh.